So basically, the crux of this thing is that the real world and the fairy tale world in the 17th century were the same thing. This is what seems to be clear. So reading the folk tales and the fairy tales, and also reading accounts of actual witchcraft, court records, or Elizabethan witch pamphlets, or whatever, the same themes and motifs would always reoccur. So what are the things that happen in all of these things? What are the most common tropes? Those have to be in the film. What are the ones that speak most personally to me? Those have to be in the film. And then what are those strange kind of exotic things that I don't know why they are working, and those definitely need to be there. So it was a combination of many sources.
What horror films and directors inspired you when you made this?
What horror films and directors inspired you when you made this?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I was like trying very hard to keep it about the primary source materials, but as far as horror, this film smells a lot like The Shining, like so much so that it's like embarrassing. But The Shining is a film that I watched a lot in my early mid-20s and tried to dissect and understand how to make a film with sustaining tension, but other than that, really it was more. Other Bergman and Dreyer are more inspirational than other horror films or horror directors.
Over there.
My question is, when dealing with people who are actual witches religiously, how, and given where the context and where this film was made, how did you integrate the knowledge of any actual witchcraft or practices of people who live this lifestyle presently?
So the question is, how did you integrate stories of real witches who follow that as a religion into this fairy story?
Okay, good question. Let's talk about this. So here's the thing. So today, we know about white witches, good witches, herbalists, cunning folk. This is the narrative of witches that we understand to be like also historical witches, right? As in something, women practicing practical magic, and so on. The evil witch today is kind of a plastic Halloween decoration. It's cheesy, not very scary, doesn't mean very much. I had lots of archetypal evil witch dreams, like ever since I was a little kid, and wanted to kind of get to the bottom of what this archetype of the evil witch was all about. And so I want to stress that the fairy tale world and the real world, aside from a few members of the extreme intelligentsia, in the early modern period, were the same thing. So I think that what I kind of understood as a kid through this whole idea of religious hysteria and witch hunts is that there is this idea that there is kind of almost a conspiracy. It's like you are a woman who has a lot of strength and power, and I'm intimidated by you, and I'm a superstitious, stupid clergyman who is now going to call you a witch, even though I don't even really necessarily believe that, but I'm going to call you a witch so I can hang you and get rid of you because fuck you. But in fact, the sexism and fear of female power was so intense in the early modern period that I actually literally would believe that you are a fairy tale witch capable of doing the things that happen in my film. So even if you believe that evil witches only exist in the mind of ignorance, I have to say, man, I've done so much research, I'm working with so many historians, that the idea of the evil witch was so powerful and so potent in the early modern period that we're still dealing with this today, and claiming female power in a positive way is something that contemporary Western culture is still working on. So basically, the portrayal of the evil witches in this film is based on my research of how, my best understanding of how a lay family of English Calvinist Puritan settlers would have understood witchcraft to be. And there was earlier drafts where Catherine actually, the mother, performed some more kind of like white magic stuff that, and William was kind of like, there's a little bit of suggestion of that here, but it just got too complicated.
Do you have any technical support on this?
Yes, I was working with. To mostly it was with museums and historians and people in the living history community who are specialized in like Elizabethan and early Stuart agricultural practices. But one of our main historians is a colonial historian. Also wrote one of the finest books on like practical witchcraft. It's extremely academic. If you don't like Diana Purkis and Ronald Hutton and people like that, you will not like this guy. But really, like it's good stuff. So yeah, lots of people.
Okay, in the back of the.
Yeah. What's that guy's name?
What's that guy's name?
Jim Baker. He lives in Plymouth.
Okay, up there.
Speaking of historical witch details, the witches at the end, what was the language they were speaking? Was it Latin? Was it nonsense syllables? Was it taken from records? What was going on there with the language?
Yeah.
Question is about the language the witches used in the end scene.
Okay.
You're in witch country, buddy.
I know.
This is so wonderful, by the way.
No,
This
it's
is great.
very exciting. In case you didn't know, I grew up in New England, and this is something that's very personal and close to me. So, okay, so let me. Yeah, I was trying very hard to keep things to be, from England and New England. Again, this is the very, very beginning of the Great Migration. I was always very interested in this kind of mythic past of New England when Western culture was so primitive here. It was almost like the Middle Ages in North America, So the witch needed to be like a folk witch and not nothing tied up in the kind of sophisticated magic of the intelligentsia. However, I realized that I did need to have like some chanting in the music. I needed some kind of text, and Latin was not going to work. But certainly they ain't Catholic, so basically what that is it's Enochian.
I thought it might have been.
This is awesome.
So like, look, I don't think that any witches who believe they were good or believe they were evil, like in this kind of folk setting, would ever have any kind of understanding of Enochian. Enochian, John Dee, Dr. Dee, you probably all know this, was Queen Elizabeth's alchemist, and he used a scry stone to talk to angels and demons, and they taught him Enochian, which is the proto-language of all languages. And so if it actually was the proto-language of all languages, potentially somehow maybe like the witches could know it, potentially. And I just didn't know what else I could possibly use. And I had to use a little bit of Crowley's work on Enochian to like change some of the Enochian keys so that I didn't actually conjure anything.
Right up here.
In terms of, this is a question for both of you. In terms of the non-witch language, I was very impressed that the language felt very antiquated and very nuanced, and at the same time it was very accessible. How did you find that balance without alienating the audience?
So it's a question about the balance between using old-timey language without alienating a modern audience.
So basically, it's a really interesting period in English language. In New England was the most literate part of the Western world. You had to teach your children how to read. They had to read the Bible. This was crucial. And so I would find wills by farmers who could read but couldn't write, so it's dictated. So assuming the dictation is correct, they have a really interesting way of with words. It's great. I have a Shakespeare background, so I like this kind of early modern English. But basically what I was doing is I was taking, I researched the vocabulary and the grammar structure, but then I would take from the primary sources sentences and phrases and categorize them, like things about farming, things to say to chastise your children, and so the earlier versions of the script were monstrous collages of other people's words that I would hone into my own. But some things remained intact. The things that children say when they're possessed are things that children allegedly say when they're possessed, and I really tried. Like there's no anachronisms, but earlier versions I was showing to my creative producers, and there are some lines that I have no fucking idea what that is. So it's like, okay, so how do I work it? And there are still people. I mean, I saw a recent review that said I didn't understand a single word of the entire film. So I was, that was not my goal, but that is,
And I'm talking from like the point of view of like the entire cast, which unfortunately they can't be here. Like we really miss them, but it was such a way into the world. Like it just, when I first read the script, I found it really odd that I didn't think it was weird that it was written kind of like Jacobean English. I was sort of like, yeah, no, this makes sense. This is perfect, and it's such like a beautiful lyrical way of speaking. It's almost like kind of like a nursery rhyme or something like that. It really kind of takes you along with the story, and I think this film would actually have been a lot more difficult to make if we were speaking the way that we're all talking today. So yeah, it was an absolute privilege to speak like that for 5 weeks.
Okay, so right here.
I would love to hear from you about what was the most challenging piece in preparing for the role, or the most challenging part of preparing for your role, and perhaps what was your favorite part?
It's a question for Anya about what was the most challenging part about preparing for the movie.
I'm not gonna lie, this is my first movie, so I didn't really know about preparing. I just kind of showed up and was like, I'm gonna do my best. Oh, okay, great. But I will say, like, in terms of scenes, and it's so nice that you guys have seen it because we can actually talk about the movie, which is like, yes. But from the beginning, like when I met Kate, when we all met, we kind of all just instantly sort of like got along, and we were like, okay, we're gonna love each other for a very, very long time. And we thought about that scene, and when it was maybe like day 3 of rehearsals that we kind of got together and we were like, okay, so that's gonna be difficult. We're not gonna enjoy that. And so let's just decide that we're gonna go for each other and just do it like hardcore from the beginning, and then hopefully we can get it done kind of quickly. And that scene was like the most, no one wants to beat up their best friend. No one wants to smash them with a bill hook. That's not exactly what you want to do. But it was like this insane moment of, both of our lives where like they would yell cut and we'd both be hysterically crying. Like we couldn't kind of hone it back. And then they'd just be like, okay, guess they're ready, so we'll go again and again and again and again. But that was, I wish I think maybe actually not preparing in a way kind of helped me with Thomasin, because I think Thomasin's not really aware of what's going on in her own life. And so the fact that I was a bit like, ooh, we're making a movie, this is exciting. I think that kind of helped with it, if that answered your question accurately.
There was a rehearsal period where like
This is true.
everyone had to learn, their work around the farm,
How to milk a goat.
and so on and so forth.
Which is harder than I ever thought it would be. It's really tough and my hands aren't that strong.
Middle. Yeah.
What was the thought process behind using a rabbit as a familiar spirit?
What was the thought process behind using a rabbit as a familiar spirit?
Daisy was a hare.
I hate to split
Sorry.
hairs.
You lost them.
So basically, the hair is one of those kind of quote like exotic things that I was really attracted to. The hair didn't really survive in North American mythology and folklore, but in European folklore, it's a big deal. From Pan, the great god Pan is wrapped in a hare's hide and whatever. And actually, I don't ever say this, but you guys, I'm in New England, but witches often turn into hares. So that's actually the witch. I would never ever be that literal with another audience. So if you're you, like, don't put this on the internet without cutting that part out. Okay?